Welcome to Everyday Martial Artist, a weekly podcast where you'll join me, Brian Doucette, as I interview a different martial artist each episode and hear their story. Some guests you may have heard of, and some you probably haven't. Be sure to subscribe where all your favorite podcasts are available. Also visit our website at everydaymartialartist.com. If you're listening for a specific interview, I sure hope you'll stay and check out the other episodes. A very special thank you to Topher Williams for our custom theme music. And now, the newest episode of Everyday Martial Artist. Everyday Martial Artist is brought to you by KOOnline.com for all your martial arts needs. Sparring and safety gear, rank belts, uniforms, weapons, patches, and more. Wholesale supplies made by martial artists for martial artists. Visit us today at ko-online.com. Hello and welcome to Everyday Martial Artist. I'm your host, Brian Doucette, and as we do every week, we're joined by a brand new guest talking about their life and their journey throughout the world of martial arts. My guest today has been one of the most sought-after instructors in the world the past 40 years because of his unique integration of martial arts, police, military, bodyguarding, and personal protection blend of styles. He's a 9th degree black belt master and founder of the World Martial Arts Centers in 1970 and the World Martial Arts Federation, which is an all-styles martial arts system and rank certification. His World Martial Arts Center is one of the longest-standing, most well-respected martial arts centers in the world today and spans more than 4 decades, training more than 40,000 students and turning out more than 700 black belts. His studio videos have been featured in Black Belt magazine numerous times, as well as other international publications. He's been personally trained by Mr. Chuck Norris for more than 30 years and is a 7th degree black belt in the Chuck Norris United Fighting Arts Federation. He also holds high-ranking belts from several other world-renowned organizations in Jiu-Jitsu, Judo, Taekwondo, Tang Soo Do, and Aikido. Please welcome to the show, Mr. Danny Lane. How are you doing today, sir?
I'm great, Brian. How are you?
I'm doing good. I'm glad we're able to do this. So what we like to do, how we kind of start the show, we go back into the past, and I want to talk about that first spark. What was that first spark, that first interest that led you to start your martial arts journey?
Well, actually, I didn't know anything about martial arts or the word karate or anything until I went into the Marine Corps in 1968. You coming from West Virginia, and there wasn't any karate studios, and it wasn't prevalent in that area. It wasn't well known. So my first taste of any kind of martial arts, and I really didn't know it was called martial arts, was in the Marine Corps boot camp in Paris Island, 1968. It was called hand-to-hand combat at that time, but what they were teaching us primarily, the hand-to-hand was jiu-jitsu that I guess the Marines learned in World War II in Japan and brought it home, but how to take care of yourself, sweeps, takedowns, chokes, things, and then we learned how to use the bayonet and, our sidearms and things like that. So that was my first taste of martial arts. It wasn't something I chose to do, it was something I had to do.
So then what made you, after the Marine Corps, what made you seek it out and want to continue it?
Well, it's a very good question. First of all, I used it. If you read my book, Some Gave It All, Through the Fire of Vietnam, there's a lot of scenes in there where we went hand-to-hand when our units were run over and overrun by the Viet Cong and North Vietnamese army, and we had to go hand-to-hand. So I've actually had to use it in real self-defense situations. When I come out, I went within a month. When I come out of the Marine Corps, I went into the State Police Academy and to become a cop. So jiu-jitsu was also taught in the State Police Academy. So,
okay.
I found that, was fairly small at that time. I was 5'10", and I was 180. But, when I come home from Vietnam, I was only 125 because of the malaria I caught. And
wow,
the heat over there and the extreme, toll it takes on you living in the jungle for about a year. So it took me for a long time to get my strength back. But anyway, they taught me that. And I went through my rookie year as a cop in 1970. I guess as luck would have it, or as, we're all on a God-given path, I guess. It's predetermined. And I've always thought that you don't really go looking for things. Things just come across at certain times in your life. So about a year after I was a cop on the street, I walked into a pizza shop of a guy that I knew before I went into the Marine Corps, and sitting there was a Korean man. So he introduced me to him, and he was a Korean master of Taekwondo from Korea. Had just been sponsored to come over to our town and teach Taekwondo. We talked a little while, and he spoke broken English, and he asked me to come by his studio. He had just opened it, and I become one of his first students, and he started teaching me Taekwondo. And it was kind of boring because he would teach me the same move, and we do repetition after repetition after repetition.
Yep.
And one day he went to lunch, and he said, "You do the high block. You do high block, Danny, while I go to lunch." And so, I was afraid not to be doing it when he come back. I wasn't even a yellow belt then. And he come back, and, I saw him coming indoors, so I started doing the high blocks again. I was really bored. But he kept saying, well, repetition makes perfection, and giving me those type of antidotes. So It wasn't long after that I was on a call of this girl screaming in an apartment. This guy was, I guess, cutting her up with a knife. And I went up to the back stairs to this apartment. I beat on the door with my nightstick, and finally he opened it. As soon as he opened it, he tried to stab me with an overhand thrust, and he had a kitchen knife in his hand, and I did that high block perfectly.
Nice.
But I didn't know what else to do, but I poked him with my nightstick, and then I got a hold of his hand like I'd seen in a movie, started beating his hand on the wall, and finally another cop come in and started punching him in the belly until we got the knife away. So that was my first use of martial arts, in a real situation outside the combat I saw in Vietnam. So I'm saying, well, if that works, just think if I get really good, what it would do. And I found out, Brian, he finally gave me the key to the studio. Like I say, he just first opened it and he trusted me. So when I would get off midnight shift at 7 a.m, I would go to the studio and work out. And I found it was a really good relief for the anxiety I had and post-traumatic stress that I was feeling and suffering, which I didn't know what it was called and what was going on, but I was still anxious and coming out of a combat zone in Vietnam and coming right onto the streets of being a cop in just a few months. I didn't know what was going on within me, but I had all this anxiety and everything going on. So it was a really good therapy for me to work out.
Oh, definitely. Yeah, I know when first time I had an instructor give me a key, it's such a turning point when you can just go in there whenever you want to and work on technique and hit a heavy bag or whatever you need to. So it makes such a next level for your training.
Well, I had to clean the studio. So if I had the key, I had to, dust the floors and clean the mirrors, take out the trash and all that stuff. I was kind of in boot camp again.
But it was worth it.
Yeah, I've been to 3 boot camps, the Marine Corps boot camp, the State Police Academy, and also in the martial arts where I did that. It was like a Miyagi type thing where you go in and, but you have to clean and everything and the windows. But I enjoyed it. It taught me so much discipline. I stayed with Master Kong, Sako Kong. He was a world champion in Korea. And we were together for almost 9 years.
Oh, wow. Okay.
And I went to Korea with him. I fought on tour over there. And he was, make him real proud of me. Let me get a real good taste of it. But I decided to go into kickboxing and open tournaments and things. And, they don't like for you to go outside their organization a lot of times in competing and learning and studying from other people. So my journey wasn't over. So I went into open tournaments. And I was seeking, out other people and trying to push myself to another level. So that's what I did. And I ended up meeting Chuck Norris in 1980. And he invited me to Torrance, California to work out with him and his brother and all the people that he was doing movies with at that time. He had just done the Octagon at that time on Chuck Norris.
Okay, and I definitely want to talk about Chuck Norris, but I want to back up a little bit. What drew you to the competition aspect of martial arts? I know it's not something that not everyone gets into. Some people do. Everyone does it for different reasons. What made you want to compete?
Well, that's a really good question too. The Taekwondo organization here in the East out here has a lot of tournaments. Masters would hold tournaments in their cities all the time, and he was affiliated with Ki-Won Kim in D.C., who was a senior Grand Master here of all the Tong Soo people that come over from Korea. But there was tournaments almost every weekend. So even though I was working midnight and stuff, I would change shifts with somebody or take a day off or something. And I started even as a yellow belt competing in these tournaments. So as I went through the ranks up to black belt, and I actually made my black belt with him in a year or maybe a little less because I was training so hard, so often. And I passed every test and I did everything they put me up to. I went to the tournaments, I won or placed second or third. And it was just something, even though I was arresting bad guys on the street as a cop and I had these physical confrontations out there, it was a challenge. It was, I guess, that adrenaline rush that I got of being in competition, especially one-on-one. So it just kind of happened over a period of time. It wasn't anything I planned.
Okay.
But once I started getting into it, but competition's not easy. You have to pay your dues. Sometimes you lose and you learn by those losses. And I was pretty good, right up to the black belt. But when you get your black belt, you're stepping in the ring with people who may have been a black belt for 10 or 15 years. So you're not going to go into a black belt competition when you're a brand new black belt. And I went almost 4 years without winning first in black belt because you had to wait till the other guy stepped down. You had to learn to get better, and you had to learn by that. So everybody always thought about fighting. So I really concentrated on my forms. Oh. Very well too.
Okay.
So I got really proficient in terms. I'm thinking, well, if I can't win in fighting right now, maybe not all these great fighters are doing forms. So I jumped over into the form competition, and the masters noticed that I had good technique, and I started winning and placing first. Then they started calling points for me in the sparring. So nice. One led to the other. So from 72 to early 75. I really didn't place in the black belt division. And I started winning kata and they call it forms in Korean, but, or young. And then I won 75, 76, and 77, the U.S. Open in the middleweight division. I won the grand championship.
Wow.
I think 2 of those years. So one led to the other.
Okay. And then during that time, did you get into teaching at that time, or did that come later?
I actually started teaching after I started getting the key to the studio in 1971.
Wow.
He was teaching. He had another school, and he wanted to open a third school. So I started teaching even at a early age before I got my black belt. So I started teaching before I got my black belt. Then when I got my black belt, I totally took over the studio in my hometown of Huntington, West Virginia. And then it wasn't a year later, I opened a school in Ashland, Kentucky. And then another year, I opened one in Portsmouth, Ohio. So he and I had 6 studios going at one time. So even though I was a full-time cop, I was still teaching and running 3 studios for a good number of years.
Okay. You said you met Chuck Norris at that tournament. Now, had he already built up that reputation? You knew who he was by that time?
Yeah, I knew who Chuck was through Black Belt magazine.
Okay.
I don't think I may have seen some of these movies like Breaker and Good Guys Wear Black. I think the third one was The Octagon. But I was traveling in Virginia Beach, and I knew Chuck. I'd read in Black Belt magazine where in Virginia Beach they had the first $1 million karate studio. It was run professionally, and I think Black Belt magazine did a whole article on that. And so when I was in Virginia Beach, I stopped by the studio to look it over and introduced myself to Bill Maher, who was the owner. And he had financed that fantastic studio with all kinds of different mats and one-way windows where people could sit and watch their children and so forth. I mean, it made a lot of money, but we started talking and got to know each other a little bit. He said, well, give me your number. I'll tell Chuck, give Chuck your number. I left away, going from talking to Bill, and I'm thinking, well, he's not going to give my number to Chuck. Chuck will never call me. So about 2 weeks later, I got a phone call. And he said, is this Danny? And I said, yeah. He said, well, this is Chuck Norris. How are you? And I said, yeah. I'm thinking somebody's pranking me, So he invited me out to California to work out with him and the guys, and they're in the Torrance studio. I think he was getting ready to do after the Octagon. I'm thinking which one it was. But that was in 1980, October 1980. So we got really close, and we worked out for a week together. And it wasn't long. He took me into his system, and it wasn't long after that I was a regional director, and then I was appointed to the board of directors, and then the national training instructor for him for quite a few years while he was out doing a lot of movies.
Okay. How difficult was it? I know it's they're both Korean styles. Tong Sudo, Taekwondo. They're basically sister arts. Was it a pretty easy transition going from one to the other?
No, actually, the Master Kong taught Tong Sudo.
Oh.
So I was already doing the Tong Sudo forms. So, I mean, they were exact same forms that Chuck used in his American Tong Sudo system. So, no, there wasn't any changeover. It was a little bit more Americanized, and we also integrated Judo and Jiu-Jitsu and Aikido along the way. So I was right in the initial part of Chuck developing what's called his United Fighting Arts Federation, where we united all the different arts into one system, so forth. So he was developing that, and we were developing our own forms for that too. So I was in the initial phase of him developing what's called now the Chuck Norris system.
Right.
And so I was very fortunate to be able to get in at that time.
While you were training with him and working with him, did you continue to be a police officer at that time too? Because I think you did that for 15 years, I think you said?
Yeah, I was. I left the police department in '85. Chuck called me and wanted me to come up and be in my first movie with him in Code of Silence in Chicago. And I was resigning from the police department about that time. I did that because of a murder case I'd worked against some mobsters and some dirty cops. And after 3 hung juries over 3.5 years, it wore me out. And plus things were happening that they were trying to retaliate against me for trying to take some of them down. And, these mobsters you just don't take down without retaliation. So,
right.
Especially the dirty cop was within our own department. He was a high-ranking officer. They'd been dirty for a long time. In fact, in a new book I had coming out, or you could find it, he was affiliated with Jimmy Hoffa.
Wow.
He got indicted on one of Jimmy Hoffa's cases in Nashville, Tennessee for jury tampering. He was down there wiretapping hotel phones and some of their rooms, and also they were calling up some of the jurors that was on the panel. They were trying to persuade him not to find him guilty. I mean, I have all the newspaper articles from New York Times and Nashville and so forth on. It's coming out in my new book coming out next. And that's why I left the police department, because I had Karate Studio, which was the Chuck Norris studio at the time, and I wanted to get in the movies, and I kind of wanted to get out of police work, so I just took an early retirement and come out before I did something I didn't want to do.
Right. So how many movies did you end up doing?
Well, I did the Code of Silence, Invasion USA, Hero and the Terror, have a knee replacement on the movie Sidekicks. And all the ones he did in the Delta Force and all the missing in action movies he did overseas.
Mm-hmm.
He did in the Philippines. He did Delta Force, I think, in Israel. So most of all of them that he did with Canon after that, it was all outside the country because they could get, they could do a movie on a lower budget.
Right.
So, and plus I had children that I had to raise and so forth. So.
Okay. Invasion USA is one of my favorites. I love that movie.
Yeah. They actually had the helicopters and tanks and everything in downtown Atlanta doing those scenes.
Really?
It was amazing. Oh, yeah.
That's cool.
Yeah.
So is that something, now when you did that, is that something that you ever thought of before meeting Chuck, getting into the movies, or was that kind of something you thought of after getting to know him and working with him a lot?
Well, actually, working out with Chuck, I worked at Chuck's house in Rolling Hills Estate. That was when he had the little house, I tell people, because, he hadn't made a lot of money at that time, and he was still, moving up into where he was.
Mm-hmm.
And almost anybody would come by the house to work out. I mean, Bill Wallace always come, Richard Norton. You'd see Howard Jackson, of course, work out with us all the time, and Bob Wall. I mean, just anybody would be there. So I would go out for weeks at a time and stay at his house sometimes and stay with some other people in Torrance. But part of our workout would be doing movie fight choreography, where we would react to kicks and punches and things like that.
Okay.
We do these circle drills, like he did in the octagon, where you're surrounded by 5 or 6 people and you do all these moves in different directions. So, I mean, I learned how to do stunt fighting and stuff during those times. I'd be working out with him and whoever was there. So it was pretty easy for me. But, they can teach you to take a shot and, how to react to a punch to the gut or a kick to the head and stuff. I know he broke my ribs in Code of Silence when we did that fight scene with the front kick to the stomach. And he almost hit me with a spinning heel kick to the head. I kind of dodged that one a little bit. But he does have good control. But, you do get hurt a little bit out there doing those things. But
oh, definitely.
it was nice. I mean, if I didn't have other obligations and commitments, I would have went, overseas and missing in action, all that stuff. And, if you're a stunt man, you don't make a lot of money, but it's still a good living.
Yeah, definitely. Thinking back to when you first started, how do you think the training has changed? A typical class in the late 70s, early 80s versus nowadays?
Well, if you're asking about tradition as opposed to what it is now, I'm trying to get my thoughts together because, I taught traditional. I mean,
right.
It's like if you were in a Japanese tournament, which I was after I got out of Tongsudo and went to the open tournaments. And, one of my ambitions was to win a national championship or world championship in different styles. And I mean, your basics, when you start with the basic, where there's a forward stance and a middle punch or a front kick, I mean, every technique has to be perfected. I mean, you chamber, you kick, you recoil, you sit down. I mean, everything's with power and focus and speed and execution. And after teaching for about 25 years in my school, almost every decade, I noticed a deterioration in my students' performance and execution and going to the tournaments because people didn't concentrate on the basics. They didn't build a good foundation to work off of. So they wanted to learn more in less time. So that, what you have there is nothing but, I always call it a conglomeration of slop. And I got so discouraged with my students that I had to my curriculum, I had to cut it probably down in a third that I used to teach just because students were going to either soccer, going to play pianos or whatever. I mean, they didn't commit themselves. I mean, they maybe would come to the studio 3 hours a week. And, you can't perfect your even over 3 years, you can't perfect technique properly like that in a traditional system. So I got discouraged with it. I said, instead of me lowering my standards, I'm going to quit teaching. And there was times I'm in tournaments and I just couldn't stand it. I said, I can't go back to the tournaments. So, if I fast forward from that to what I see today in these tournaments, I mean, I go to our tournaments in Vegas and Battle of Atlanta, and everybody wants to do, it's like a bow staff. I mean, a bow staff is a wooden staff that you use for self-defense and other things, and it's a traditional weapon. But now they have these little light aluminum things that you can twirl like a baton.
Yep. And
these, it looks great and it looks flashy, and they do these 360-degree kicks or 470s, and they do aerial and everything, and it's nothing more than, it's entertaining, But if you really break down what they're doing, the fundamentals are not there. The stances, the execution, and power, it's more for show. So all the studios now is turned in. It has to be fun. If it's not fun, the kids will leave. And they have to have these play things that they do, and you have to have birthday parties, and you do that, and that's how they make money. If you run a strict traditional school now in America, there's very few of them will stay open as far as financial because nobody wants to work that hard.
I train in traditional Taekwondo. That's my core style, and my instructor has told me so many times that if he taught classes like he did in the 80s and 90s, he wouldn't have any students, which is kind of sad.
Not at all. No, there's the attention span's not there, the discipline's not there, the dedication, the sacrifice. Nobody would know. I mean, my own kids, they have no idea what it's like to have to go through that to achieve things that we did. They just think it's given to you. You just walk through and it's given, and it's just not that way. I get frustrated. Like I said, I walk out and close my studio. I said, I'm just not going to do it anymore because I was so frustrated. My students wouldn't do it, didn't care. They were dropping out if I pushed them too hard. I mean, when and I started teaching in 1971, I was teaching like the Marine Corps boot camp. They stood at attention. They did everything perfectly. They didn't blink an eye. They didn't breathe nothing. They were afraid to move, but they were good. I turned out national champions, and they were great. And we were very successful with that. I had a little stick. I would tap them on the legs or a bamboo stick and things like that. And nowadays you're afraid because of civil liability if somebody gets hurt, if somebody touches somebody the wrong way. I mean, it's just the world has changed.
Right.
I love teaching seminars because I go into town, I teach for a couple of days, and I leave and I'm gone. So I don't have liability, of doing anything. But I can tell you this, I've been teaching all over the world until I had my a heart attack 3 years ago and suffered a stroke, so that set me back. And, the black belts, even in this country and other countries, they come in wearing black belts, and they really are not any better than a white belt when we used to train in the 70s and 80s. I'm thinking, well, how did you get that black belt? Everything they did, they could do a lot of stuff, but everything they did was sloppy. And I always told them I would rather if you know 5 to 7 moves perfectly and not have to think about them and be able to defend yourself and learn 100 moves that you can't think of and can't use. I mean, it's just a waste of time. So over the recent years, the only thing I teach is just reality-based things, something they can learn quick, something they can comprehend quickly, and also be effective in real situations. I quit trying to teach tradition, even though I still have the system and they go through the forms that they want. So I do have a reality-based system called the Danny Lane Fighting System, which is nothing more than the Marine Corps techniques I use and police defensive tactics I use, and also, from Tong Soo Do, Judo, Jiu-Jitsu, and Aikido, things that I've learned that I think are practical and easy. I mean, I've been in enough street fights as a cop and in the Marines, and also that I know what works and what don't work. I mean, what works for me and what won't work out there. I just try to simplify it. And, still people won't practice the repetition. They'll just do it, maybe 20 or 30 times and they think they've learned it. Well, what's the next technique? And then, just like the handgun technique. I mean, you do them thousands of times, with your eyes open, with your eyes closed. I mean, you learn it there's no thinking process. If you have to think, it's too late. What I was always taught and what I remember.
I know I've had the conversation. I've had, female friends that have taken like the 1-day self-defense seminar. I'm like, it's not going to do you any good. A year from now, you're not going to remember what you learned for 1 hour on a Saturday afternoon at the YMCA. I mean, it's repetition. You got to practice that technique hundreds, if not thousands of times for it to actually work and become muscle memory.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, I always said, there's 5 levels of training. You have the physical. You start out with the physical, and the mental, and then there's the emotional, then there's the psychological, and then there's the spiritual. I mean, and then you go through each one of those phases over a period of time of training. It's not something maybe it's laid out in a notebook or a manual, but it's something, the transition from being physical to the mental, where you're thinking and doing things in the physical, and the mental, I mean, you're doing things pretty much at the same time. Because, you can have all the training in the world. I've seen that in the Marine Corps. I've seen it in combat over there. I've seen it in the police department, where people think that they know stuff, but when the pressure comes over and you're in a life and death situation, if you don't have the emotional part down, that you can react under fire and, react and do something and then think about it later, you're going to get killed or you're going to get hurt. So that's even when I taught police academies, and I've taught the Secret Service in D.C., I've taught the FBI, I've taught U.S. Marshals, and I've taught all kinds of people all over this country. It's not about teaching them how many techniques, but it's teaching just a few techniques that you learn and you'll never forget. And it's something you can do spontaneously without any thought process. Because if you have to think, it's too late. It's like gun disarming techniques. They have to be done within 1/2 of a second, not even a second.
Yep.
if you can touch the gun. If it's in the back, it's going to be a little bit low, but as long as you parry the gun or the knife, you'll have a chance. But action's faster than reaction, so if you act, the time they react to your action, you have them. If you don't have them in that first second or half, then it's too late sometimes. Nice. So I always work on those techniques on so many repetitions, and then it gets down to where, well, you think about it, and then you do it, and then you think about it later. It's like, okay, that was pretty good.
Nice. I know I interviewed James DeMaio last year, one of Bruce Lee's original students before he passed away. And that's one thing he said when, Bruce was training back then. He worked on 3 or 4 techniques. He called it your toolbox. Those are the 4 tools that could get you out of almost any situation. You perfected those tools. And so all of his students had, and they weren't the same for every student. It was based on the student. You have these 4 or 5 tools that'll work for you, and this guy has 3 or 4 or 5 that'll work for him, and you perfect your toolbox. So it's kind of the same type thing. That's a great way to look at it.
Yeah, I mean, I always relate it to a street fighter. I mean, a good street fighter, and I've seen a lot of them when I was a cop because nobody likes the police. And we always had our guys in town that were just great street fighters. And no matter how hard you hit them with your nightstick or your fist or whatever, you had to bring your lunch to take them down. But those guys would have maybe 3 or 4 techniques, as long as they got a sucker punch or they got something. I mean, they don't have 100 techniques. They may have 3 or 4. Mm-hmm. And the most dangerous thing about them is their mindset. They want to hurt you. And their intent is to hurt you or kill you. And it's just their mindset. It doesn't have to be about technique at all. If the person has the right mindset, it's like in the Marine Corps, they train us so much like the mindset of a warrior. And no matter what pain you have and what situation you have, you can overcome and adapt to whatever situation is. And you don't need a bunch of techniques. You just need to know what you know very good.
Nice. Well, change directions a little bit. You kind of mentioned a little bit. You mentioned your first book, Some Gave It All. I'm curious, what led to writing the first book, and what led to you wanting to become an author?
Oh, that's a real good question too. Most combat. I mean, there's a lot of veterans, but a lot of veterans that go into combat. I'm talking about on the ground, hand to hand, and you as a young 19 and 20-year-old young man going into combat, having to kill people, and you have to kill or be killed, and put out in a jungle situation with a squad or a platoon or a company of people, and you're in the jungle and you're fighting people. It's even better than you in the jungle warfare and so forth. So I mean, a lot of people come out of combat, they have post-traumatic stress, they have anxiety, and a lot of people don't talk about their war experiences. I didn't for 50 years, but it's destroyed a lot of my personal life. It's causing me a lot of anxiety, and it was causing me trouble in my personal life. Same thing with my wife. She understood it, but at the same time, she was trying to help me. She said, "Why don't you just write it out," and so forth, because I wasn't comfortable going to therapy. And, the Veterans Administration did have us going to therapy after we got home for a long time and so forth. But anyway, I was still having trouble with it, nightmares, not sleeping, and so much anxiety that it causes us. The nightmares never go away. And no matter what you see, what you do in combat, it never leaves your mind. It's like there's a saying there for the Vietnam people, your body may have come home, but your mind's still over there. And so many people, so many Vietnam veterans particularly, committed suicide. I mean, there's estimated up to 20 or 21 a day still kill themselves, the ones that's left. And I've been there at certain times where I just couldn't handle the mental pressure no matter what. And, you go to veterans, they want to put you on medication, and it doesn't help. It doesn't make it go away. So anyway, I started writing the book in 2016 of all my combat missions and after boot camp and the relationships I developed and a lot of the missions I was on, and started putting it on the page. And I had a co-writer that had been published author before, Mark Bowser, who was on the cover. And I started writing, police stories and writing all this stuff out. So, I had a lot of tears coming out and a lot of memories writing it, but it finally got done. It's really weird how things happen. I was signed by a big, publishing house, some Made for Success in Seattle, Washington, published the book. And it come out on May the 1st, 2018. And on May the 1st, 2018, I was in the Veterans Hospital with a possible heart attack. So I couldn't even enjoy the release of my book.
Oh, wow.
And they finally sent me home and said, well, your heart looks good. We just think you have this excess anti-acid. And so I want you to take the Ranitidine a little bit more. So I come home and I kept getting increasingly worse the next 9 days. So on May the 10th, I had a massive heart attack, almost died. And they had to do open heart surgery on me at 3 o'clock in the morning. They found 2 blocked arteries in there that the Veterans Hospital didn't find 9 days earlier.
Wow.
So
Scary.
I started writing it actually for self-therapy and to put it on the page and face it and try to deal with it and put it behind me. And that was very successful. And, unknowingly to me, the book got to number 1 on Amazon, and then Chuck Norris endorsed it. And he wrote a big 3-page review of it on his Twitter account.
Nice.
And then a lot of people got behind it, and it just did real well. So, I'm writing the one about a lot of my police murder cases and stuff when I was a detective now, called Some Gave It All Brothers in Blue, which is the sequel to Some Gave It All Through the Fire of the Vietnam War.
Okay.
It can be found on Amazon, Books A Million. It's all over the place. It can be downloaded in audiobook, Nook, Kindle. These are all the formation. Not formation, but different versions of it.
Yeah. When does the new one? When does the new one come out?
Well, I'm so critical of what I'm writing now. I keep going back and editing. I'm about halfway through it, so maybe by the end of the year, I'm hoping.
Okay.
With this one, the old murder case that I had to go back, and I'm trying to get the clerk to get the original files out of the archives, and I'm waiting for just a lot of information there. They were in the late 70s and early 80s, most of the murder cases I worked. After that, though, I've been a private detective for 42 years. I've worked over 200 murder cases during that, so there's a lot of murder cases I can work on. I'm probably going to do one book just on my most unique ones.
Okay. I'm definitely looking forward to that one. That'll be a good one. I'll be watching for that. And I'll definitely put a link for your other one on the podcast show notes when it comes out too. So
the somegaveitall.com, you can go there and get all kinds of previews. I've done interviews and television appearances with a lot of people. There's links to that, endorsements, like I said, previews. There's other combat missions from other Marines on there. And so at somegaveitall.com, you can order the book there, and they come directly to me, and they'll be autographed and sent out if somebody wants an autograph one.
Oh, cool. Yeah, I will put that link on there.
Great.
So what advice would you give people who are looking to get involved in martial arts for the first time, and they know nothing about it, and they're just kind of wondering what are 1 or 2 things they should look for in a school and an instructor, and maybe something to avoid?
Well, I guess the first thing would be the how long the school has been open there, and what the opinion is of people that went there before, and always go in and ask for a free week of lessons or something like that, see if you enjoy it. And it depends if people go there for self-defense. Parents should send their children there to learn discipline and to learn how to obey rules and regulations and what ethics are and what rules are and how to follow those, and to teach them the discipline to learn. The first thing that they would learn there is how to listen. And if they stand still long enough and they keep their ears open and their mouth shut, they'll learn how to get all this knowledge and so forth. And then just, I always thought in my mind, I'm thinking everybody that when they get out of high school should have to go to the military at least for 6 months or something like that. Okay. Just go through boot camp. Just to appreciate what it's about. That's why the children today and the teens and the people in their 20s and 30s, they have no discipline. They have their head, they have their mind and their iPhones and stuff. Their attention span is very limited. And I don't know, that's why I see a deterioration in our society in America. There's a lack of respect. There's a lack of understanding. There's a lack of those just core issues that we grew up with. I know, of course, I'm 73, so I grew up in the country, and life was simpler at those times, and life was easier, and life was better. I love technology. I do. I have a really giant screen, and I love sports, and I do computer work. I do my own website designing and stuff, and I love computers. But, I just think there's a time to have them, time not, especially with children, so they can really get the core values of what life's all about and what's important.
Yeah, definitely. Well, you mentioned, mandatory military service, and I know I've had conversations before with guests about mandatory martial arts training in schools. Now, did you work much with Chuck Norris on his, Kick Drugs Out of America program, where it was actually, I can't remember how many schools in Texas he had it in, but I know it was mandatory. I think it was like 6th through 8th grade, mandatory martial arts training, and he had like 600 or 700 kids in that program for a while, didn't he? Yeah,
they call it Kickstart now.
Yeah.
Kick Drugs Out of America started when President Bush Sr. was in the White House. That's when I went over and trained the Secret Service in handgun disarming as well. And I was with him when he initiated that. A lot of my black belts and a lot of black belts who trained with me still work down in Texas in the Kick Drug program.
Nice.
The Kickstart program. And they've got thousands now in that. And actually 5% royalties of my book, when it come out, I donated to Kickstart. And it just goes straight to the royalties for the endorsement.
Okay.
So, it's a phenomenal thing where he tries to keep these kids out of the gangs and off the drugs and everything. Chuck is very passionate about that. But
I'd love to see that go nationwide someday. I wish that. I know that was his goal initially, and I'd love to see that.
It almost did. We got them in Chicago and Detroit at one time in school. I don't really know what happened, why the money wasn't coming in enough to keep it open, or what happened. But he's pretty much just focused on Texas now.
Yep.
And all the money that comes in is through fundraising and stuff that we do, and other schools do, and like that. So I mean, it really should be required, because if it was, and people would stay out of gangs and off drugs and things like that. It's just all about discipline and respect, integrity and loyalty as the 4 key words of the Chuck Norris system. And we've always went by those 4 key words.
Nice. So now for most of your career, you've primarily been a traditional martial artist, as you said. So I'm just curious, what are your thoughts on like MMA and the UFC? And are you a fan?
Well, I'm a fan. Actually, the first 8 UFC, I was with Michael D. Pasquale Jr. He had the Karate International magazine, and he and I was actually the programmer and stuff. We did the first web thing for America Online. We had the Martial Arts Worldwide Network on America Online, and I programmed and did all that. And we did chat rooms, and we were the first ones to do live streaming video around the world on pay-per-view with the UFC. And I forget the guy's name, but he was from New York. He owned it. He's the one that ended up selling it to people that Dana White worked for him. So I love it. I was there during the initial ones when, Hoist Gracie was there and all those guys, and we did ringside commentation chats. And like I said, we eventually went to streaming video and pay-per-view, and technology was still dial-up back then. It wasn't high speed.
Yep.
It was hard to stream, high-def video to the internet and video in the around the world, but we did it, and it was pretty successful. So I was instrumental in helping get that moving, because with America Online, that was the original, like Facebook now. I mean, it was chat rooms and all that, and doing the chats, and we were narrating the blow below online. We had 5 people that could type real fast doing that blow below, and that people on America Online could see what was going on and things. So it was real cool.
Nice. So is any of that stuff still out there? Like, can you still find like your guys' blow by blow commentary?
No, I've always looked for it. I keep searching for it.
That would be cool to see, just to read through it.
Yeah, but I like MMA. I mean, I watch the fights and stuff, and these guys are in it for the money now, and they do make really good money. I mean, back then they were paying fighters like $10,000 or something a piece, but they make really good money, and I like it. I just don't like it when they get in a clinch or to get down on the ground and the whole fight is there. I know that's the strategy and it's a way to win, but I don't know. I think American kickboxing and things like that's coming back, these channels, and there's more excitement. There's more skill. And, I mean, I don't think the kids, and I don't think people can identify with their champions because they don't stay champion long enough to. It's like a Bill Wallace. Bill's almost 80 years old, and people around the world still connect with him because he can kick you in the head 3 different ways.
Yep.
I mean, Bill and I are the best of friends, and we've trained all kinds of times. We spar all kinds of times, and there's 2 ways you can get away from Bill. You get straight into his chest where he can't get to you, or just stay real far away. I always could sweep him, but he has a bad leg. He has that bad leg, so I don't want to sweep him. So he's amazing. He does every Wednesday night he has a class at his home, and he's got all kinds of people on Zoom. Logs in, takes his class.
So now, were you involved at all with the World Combat League when Chuck was trying to get that going? Because I loved that. I wish that would have really took off.
No, I wasn't. No.
Okay. Because that was kind of the thing that was basically kickboxing, like old school kickboxing, and it was so fun to watch.
Yeah, I mean, I got a Samsung television. I guess there's a free channels come with it, and there's all kinds of those kickboxing things. They're in some kind of a sunken mat area or something, and they just go at it. I mean,
nice.
It's coming back, and it's a different type of athlete.
Mm-hmm. Definitely.
Joe Corley's been trying to bring back the PKA, and we talked about it a lot. I mean, we get together with Joe Corley and Jeff Smith and Don Willis and all these guys. We've been talking about I'm bringing it back and the whole thing over. I'm not really sure what's going up. We went to Canada and there was some people a couple months ago and trying to get some TV deals done or something like that.
Yeah, Joe talked about that when he was on my show, and he said he'd keep me updated. So I'm keeping my fingers crossed that it happens. So that'd be awesome to see.
Yeah, me too.
Cool.
I was actually watching Joe Lewis doing some sparring with one of my black belts showed up on my Facebook. How they show these little videos now.
Oh yeah, nice. So who would you put on your martial arts Mount Rushmore? And it doesn't have to be 4, But who were maybe a couple, 2 or 3 or 4 that you'd put on your Mount Rushmore of martial arts?
Well, I've had the pleasure of working extensively with everyone. Of course, Chuck would be number one because I've worked with him more and I'm loyal to him. And Joe Lewis would be the second because Joe's always been a good friend of mine. He's an ex-Marine and so forth, and he's always wanted me to be in his system. And, I didn't get a chance to go do that, but the one that took over his system is trying to get me in it. And that's one of my things I want to do is, be certified with Joe. And then, of course, Bill has been a great friend with me and tutored me along the way. And then, underneath that, probably Keith Vitale. I could probably put about 20 or 30 on there. Howard Jackson and I worked together, and I stayed with Howard a lot in L.A., and we trained a lot. His boxing and kickboxing was so good. And he's a former Marine as well. And
some good answers on
that.
Nice.
Robert McEwen.
Okay.
I've done seminars with and studied Bobber's the Nihongoshi Aikido for about 30 years, which I'm a second degree in. It took me 21 years to get my first degree.
Wow.
In Nihongoshi. Of course, I just studied here and there, and I would see him do it at seminars. But then I started getting his videos and stuff, and almost everything I do is Nihongoshi Aikido and small circle jiu-jitsu from Wally J that I learned a lot from. But I've learned from so many people that. But I had this saying, if you just learn one thing from one seminar that you go to, it'll be worth it. If you put it into your, like you say, toolbox and develop it and perfect it, it'll work for you. So when I would go to seminars, if I wasn't teaching, I would be listening and watching and trying to learn. Well, you don't have to learn 100 things in a seminar, but if you learn that one thing, it could save your life. And one thing, my gunnery sergeant told me that when I left Paris Island and boot camp going to ITR and getting ready to go to Vietnam. He said he was a big, tall, black drill instructor. And I didn't think he liked anybody because he screamed at us and beat us all the time. But he stopped me when I was going out the door to get on the bus to go to Camp Lejeune. He said, Lane, I think you're going to make it. Just remember, that one thing can always save your life. And that's kind of in my book, and Some Gave It All. It's always that one thing that will save your life. You don't know what it is. It'll always show up on time and serve you well if you learn it.
Nice. Thinking back over your whole martial arts career, is there one philosophy you've learned that really stands out, that comes to the top, that you keep coming back to?
I may have just said it.
That's kind of what I was thinking. As soon as you said that, I'm like, that kind of leads to this question, and maybe that's the answer, which is fine.
I'll kind of follow that up because, there was a lot of situations when I was taught, and I'm not really big and wasn't really strong, but I was fast. But, there's one, what's coming into my head right now, my partner and I, and he was a black patrolman, and he trained with me as well. He was a good boxer, Austin Harrison. And we had a guy in a family dispute, but when we went in, it was a domestic dispute. This guy backed up and he had a shotgun, 12-gauge shotgun pointed at us. Well, of course, we didn't have our guns out at that time, but the family was screaming. There was kids. There was this lady screaming that he was terrorizing with. And I guess this guy was drunk or having some mental issues. But I'm thinking, okay, if I can just get close enough to him and just keep getting calmed down, because I'm pretty quick with that little skip side kick, a shuffle or a slide up or however you want to say it. But if I can get that range just enough that I can get there, I know I can knock him. I can kick him all the way up in the air and knock that shotgun out of his hand. If I can just kick him in the chest, you got to kick higher than the belly button, because if you kick high, the people come forward. But if you kick low, he'll bend over. So I need to get him in the chest. So I'm just thinking that one thing that I could think of. I'm going to side kick this guy so hard, that gun's going to fly over. And I didn't know if it would happen or not, but that's the only thing I had going in. And all of a sudden I went bam, side kick, and I was just talking to Austin the other day. He's down in South Carolina, and I'm writing a bunch of stories with him in my new book. That guy, flew up in the air. His shoes come off of him. That shotgun went up in the air, and he went flying over a table, and it broke and everything. And then I had him, with my gun pointed at him, and he said, I give up. I don't want to be beaten no more.
That's great.
I think, well, okay, because I'm always thinking, you got to hit first. If you don't hit first, you're not going to win most of the time. If you get hit first, the fight's over, and you're going to get disorientated or hurt. Or knocked out. So another philosophy is you got to hit first to win. If a fight's going to get on you, if you don't hit them first, you have less of a chance of winning. So situations like that, I always thought that one thing. What am I going to do? Back fist, or I'm going to do this, or I'm going to do that. I call them leadoff techniques. I did a seminar with Big John Morrison down in Houston. I taught him a private lesson. It's on the internet. And he's about 6'4" and about 280. I was talking about leadoff techniques. So every time he would move on me, I would hit him with something and have, my defense. So I always thought, well, if that guy moved on me with a back fist or a karate chop or there was another story I had where I was pulling this guy over to give him a ticket for speeding, and he was in a high-powered Mustang, which was great, but he was just speeding through this neighborhood, and he was so arrogant and things. And he said, "I'm not going to sign the ticket," and things like that. And he was getting real arrogant. And I took the ticket back to his car, and he wouldn't take it. And during the course, he pulled out, and he almost ran over me.
Wow.
And so I got in my car and started chasing him. I chased him out of the city limits, and my shift commander was telling me to come back. It's not a felony. You can't chase somebody. And I'm thinking, what I said to him is, "You're breaking up. I can't understand you. Can you repeat?" There was no way I was going to not come back. I chased this guy for 50 miles out of my city, out of the city limits, up a gravel road on a country road where I had no radio transmission or nothing. And he finally wrecked his car and then started smoking. Well, here's me with my red lights on this country road, and gravel country road, just me and him. And I order him out of the car. He comes out of the car, but I can't see him. Well, he won't show me his hand. So I finally walk a little bit closer, and I'm thinking, okay, I had a gun. I put the gun in my left hand, put it on my hip, because I'm kind of right-handed. So as soon as I got close to him, he moved with his hand. I hit him with a karate chop right in the throat. Well, he went down immediately and started quivering and everything like he was convulsing. I'm thinking, okay, I done killed this guy. So I sat down on the road, and he was shaking. I'm thinking, what am I going to do now? And finally, he come to. I didn't put the cuffs on him or anything. I thought he was dead. I'm just sitting there thinking, oh, gosh, I have to kill this guy. I karate chopped him. But finally, he come to, and he started cussing me and everything again. So I knocked him out that time with a right cross. I put the cuffs on him, put him in the back. So I learned something. The rest of my whole career, I never karate chopped anybody anywhere because it was too dangerous. But I knew it worked.
Wow.
No, you know what? I didn't hit him in the throat. I hit him on the carotid, right on the side of the neck.
Ooh.
And probably on the vagus nerve that ran through there. Anyway, he went out. He went out like a light, and he started quivering with his feet and things. I'm thinking, okay. So then I had to put him in the back of the car and drive back there, and put him in jail. He hadn't heard from me for hours. I didn't know where the car was. I didn't know the name of the road or anything. So anyway, but it was kind of like one of those things I did that I kind of regretted.
That's crazy. Okay.
Yeah, it is.
I got a few more fun ones to wrap it up. Now, these last few, you can't pick something you've been involved in. So do you have a favorite martial arts book?
Actually, Richard Duke Tershell wrote a book that's still out there now called The Chuck Norris System. So I have a copy of it, and that's kind of like our Bible we started out with. It had the basic techniques, the Tong Pseudo forms, and all that stuff in it. So
okay.
I don't read very many martial arts books at all. I don't even know of any. Okay. I'm sure there's a lot out there. They have these Hall of Fames, and they have the world's greatest martial arts things, and all these things that come out in the encyclopedia and who's who and things like that. I'm in all those. Yeah. And I support all of them, but I don't read them for excitement or enjoyment. It's just a documentation. It's like the Hall of Fames. There's so many Hall of Fames now, and I get invited to all those Hall of Fames, and there's so many that it just depends on which ones are legitimate and which ones you want to be in, because a lot of the Hall of Fames are more for money making for some people, and then others because I see people coming getting Hall of Fame awards for certain things in certain categories, and they don't even deserve them. So I'm kind of torn about that. I support those, and I like those people, and people should be, but there's no way to fact check a lot of these people are getting these awards, because they'll go back in their hometown and say, hey, you got inducted into the World Martial Arts Hall of Fame, or this Hall of Fame, or this Hall of Fame. Everybody think they're good, and they might not be trained at all or certified at all. There's no fact-checking organization in this country that fact-checks everybody. And you can go on Facebook and people are bad-mouthing and fact-checking everybody. Yep. I can make a comment about anything on Facebook, and there's so many people in there that have different opinions. They'll come back bashing you with their style, that style, this, that, and the other. And you can put something on there. Well, you get killed doing that. Well, you should do it this way. Then I'll go watch their techniques, and I feel kind of the same way. So I kind of just stay silent. I don't get involved in it. So I don't post anymore too much. I do post a lot of my training videos online because I want people that are following me to at least learn something. So if it's simple, and they can learn it quick and fast and easy, and it's made its mark. Okay.
All right. Good. Two more fun ones. Favorite martial arts TV show?
I watch reruns of Walker, Texas Ranger 3 hours a day because I've been, like I said, having a lot of medical issues, so I kind of have to stay home. And I know it went from 1990 to 1999, 9 years. I watch him every day. And, the more I watch him, the more I realize Chuck is a pretty good actor.
Oh yeah, I love that. It's a great show. Same thing. I still watch reruns. I tried watching the new one, but it's Walker without martial arts is just not right. So I just could not watch the new one.
I haven't watched the first one of that one. Of course, I get to see a lot of my old friends in there. That's some of the stunt guys and stuff, and a lot of the choreography and stuff, and the stuff that we did back in the old days. And it's always funny because I've been a real cop, and it's just and the Texas Rangers can come in and there'll be 6 or 8 people, and some of them with guns and stuff, but they'll fight for a long time, and then they end up, sometimes they don't take them to jail at all. They just say, all right, get out of here. I mean, you hit people with spinning heel kicks and you drop them and things like that, and get out of here. It's so funny, but
nice.
I have one story with you. Actually, I was with Chuck when he was reading the pilot scripts for 3 different types of shows to do on TV. So I actually read the original scripts that was sent to Chuck. He got them when we were down in Houston doing Sidekicks. He was going to do this television series, so I read it. It wasn't called Walker, Texas Ranger at that time, but it was a Texas Ranger. What made me think of it kind of was the same character he did in Lone Wolf McQuade, which was the Texas Ranger.
Exactly. Yep.
And another one was him being a cop, almost like I forget that guy's name. Dennis Weaver did the show there in New York City. He was a Texas Ranger or something. He had to go to New York City and do it. I forget the name of the thing. Mm-hmm. And I told Chuck my opinion. I said, I think this one fits you, being a Texas Ranger. Chuck's from Oklahoma, so he's a country boy anyway.
Yep. Nice. And final one, and once again, you can't pick one that you've been involved in. What do you have a favorite martial arts movie?
Well, is it going to be, is it going to be worldwide, like the Kung Fu type of movies?
Oh, yeah. Anything you want to pick. Yep.
I'll pick Code of Silence because I was in it. That was my first one.
Okay. How about one that you weren't in?
Of Chuck's or just anybody?
Any martial arts movie.
I'm trying to think of the name of some of them. But, I guess Enter the Dragon is a classic. I mean, I've watched it a number of times, and the one with Bob Wall in it and things like that.
Love that movie. Yep, that's a good answer.
Yeah.
I think about 7 of my guests have picked that one, so there's nothing wrong with that one either.
No, I didn't get a chance to meet Bruce. He passed before I got to meet him, but he just lived about 2 blocks from Chuck. Mm-hmm. He lived close enough to Chuck would walk over to his house and train. But I did meet his wife. I did meet Brandon.
Oh wow!
Okay. And I was actually in L.A. at Chuck had a restaurant down in what was it? Anyway, he had a restaurant. His former wife had a restaurant down there, and I was out visiting and saying we had and Brandon did the movie Kung Fu. Mm-hmm. The remake on Kung Fu. I was there for his party and stuff and met him and things like that. It was so unfortunate what happened to him and Bruce. But that was a great movie. I think I've watched it a number of times, and the choreography and everything. And, I know that they are just the best. I mean, they're doing choreography over there, so it's really a classic I like.
Yeah, I've been lucky enough to interview at least 3 people who knew Bruce Lee, who trained with Bruce Lee, and so it's cool hearing those stories and stuff. But I just want to say, man, this has been such an honor to have you on the show. I know we've been trying for a while, and your schedule's been kind of crazy and stuff, but I so appreciate your time, and I've enjoyed this so much, hearing your stories.
Well, sometimes I have to reach deep into my mind, especially I'm still in medication with all this medical issues, and my memory sometimes is very vivid, and sometimes I've been fortunate to be among all those people, coming from a little country town in West Virginia, and a lot of people, you don't know where you're going in life, you just kind of ride with it. I didn't know I was going to the Marine Corps. I didn't know I was going to be a cop. I didn't know I was going to get in martial arts. I didn't know I was going to have a martial arts studio. I didn't know I was going to win any championships or meet Chuck Norris and get in some of his movies and meet all these people. And one thing I know about all the people I've met all over the world, I mean, we're all human beings. We all can be vulnerable. We all put our pants on the same way, especially the men. And you have to ride that wave. And when opportunity knocks, you have to jump in with both feet. So you have to be prepared. I mean, there are setbacks along the way. There's all kinds of obstacles in every way. There's nothing easy to accomplish. And like I said, when a door does open, you have to be prepared with whatever you have to jump in with both feet and make your dreams come true. So nothing I've ever accomplished in life is something I pre-planned. It was just a part of a journey that I've rode and went down different journeys. But I do get signs. I do get times. It's like when I left the police department. I was losing my edge. I was losing my instincts. I've been on for 15 years. I was disappointed. I went back to being on a patrol from being a homicide detective because of this murder case I worked at. It didn't come out in my favor. And I lost faith in the justice system. And my heart wasn't in being a cop anymore. As a result of that, I was losing my edge, my mindset. And I almost got shot in my last week of being on the force 3 different times on burglaries and armed robberies, where I walked in on people, made a mistake, didn't see them, and they could have shot me. They had guns right on me, and they didn't shoot me. And I heard this word, I guess, I'm sure it was from God. He said, it's time to go. I went in and resigned, put my badge down, and left.
Wow.
So, I mean, it was very powerful. I mean, I wanted, it's time to go. And I knew I was losing my edge. I knew I was making mistakes. And after 15 years of being a cop, I didn't want to die out there with some punk shooting me when I went through a door and he's hiding behind it and had a gun right on me.
I think you made the right choice. So.
Yeah. I mean, there's always a time to go, and you just have to know when it's time. And you listen to the signs, and you just go. And you might not know what to do, and you might not know where you're going, but you'll find it out if you have that discipline. And so, if you read my books, I've been homeless. I've been homeless as a teen. Mm-hmm. I joined the Marine Corps to keep from going to jail, to keep from being a thief or a robber, to support myself, because I was broke, didn't have anywhere to go. That's how I ended up in the Marine Corps.
Wow.
And the Marine Corps made me into a man. And when I come out, I just kind of kept growing with that discipline I learned in there. That there's nothing going to be easy, but the hard work and dedication, you can do anything.
I think that's a great way to end it. I seriously, it's been an absolute honor, and I'll send you the link when the episode's ready, and I will promote. Like I said, I'll put your websites out there, your book, and everything, and we'll promote it for you.
I appreciate it. It's been a pleasure.
Thanks for listening to Everyday Martial Artist. We hope you will join us every week for a brand new episode with a different martial artist telling their story. If you enjoy the show, be sure to leave us a review. Also, be sure to check out our website at everydaymartialartist.com. There you can find all of our episodes and contact us to suggest guests and ask questions. Again, thanks for listening to Everyday Martial Artist, and we'll see you next week.